The secrets of the Emperor's captives, hidden under layers of dread, were never intended for mortal hearing. I am interrogator Malchus Rowe, dispatched to the most profound depths below the Imperial Palace, into realms absent from every sanctioned chart. As one plunges lower, the chill intensifies, infused with the aroma of aged alloys and long-buried suffering. The guardians escorting me remain expressionless, uttering nothing save their curt directives. They lead me to enclosures pulsing with warp-touched vibrations, housing detainees unchanged across 10 millennia. My task appears straightforward: document their admissions. Yet upon questioning a captive who murmurs of intimate acquaintance with the Emperor, the fabric of existence starts to fracture. Every account dismantles the foundations of my understanding of the Imperium's past. Far too late, I grasped that the vacant chamber at corridor's end was prepared not for them, but for seekers of forbidden knowledge the Emperor decreed humanity must forever ignore. I was never destined to emerge from the abyssal vaults beneath the Imperial Palace. That truth dawns on me now. I am Malchus Rowe, interrogator of the Holy Inquisition, and this log functions as both my admission and a dire alert. If it ascends to the exalted tiers above, understand that my actions stemmed from untainted loyalty and reverence for our God Emperor. Maybe that blind faith marked my initial error. The directive arrived via unconventional routes, bypassing my superior inquisitor, delivered instead by an envoy of the Adeptus Custodes, a towering figure in auramite armor, whose subdued command quelled my instinctive doubts. He asserted the mandate flowed from the High Lords themselves, though he artfully avoided naming any. He deemed it a singular privilege, a hallowed obligation to chronicle the revelations of the Emperor's most ancient detainees, those entombed since the Horus heresy. Insights meant to finalize select annals and fortify the Imperium's legacy. I recall his gaze, unblinking throughout, and his colossal frame frozen in eerie immobility, akin to an animated effigy. I surrendered all armaments, all comms devices, armed solely with a lone data slate bearing ciphers surpassing any I'd faced in my 17 years of service to the throne. The device felt off in my grasp, its surface oddly heated, overly attuned to my gestures. I brushed aside such unease as mere trepidation before venturing past the charted frontiers of the Imperial Palace into undocumented strata. My attendants were 3 custodians who withheld identities and limited discourse to navigational orders. We pressed onward through escalating barriers of vigilance, beyond servitors sporting prosthetics alien to my experience. Their optics followed us with uncanny vigilance, mechanisms whirring in hushed efficiency hinting at forbidden mechanicum arts. The atmosphere turned stagnant, then cloying, then biting as we delved deeper. Each stratum introduced fresh climbs, mounting strain on my senses. I strove to chart the path mentally, a reflex from inquisitorial drills. 312 treads down the initial spiral, 47 strides through a hallway flanked by defaced effigies. Next came a drop on a grav shaft emitting a ceaseless drone that gnawed at my molars. Beyond that, my reckoning faltered, and I wager that was deliberate. The passage served as ceremonial haze, engineered to bewilder. The ultimate portal demanded the trio's palms on distinct interfaces, intoning phrases in a tongue that clawed at my mind. No variant of low Gothic, nor high, nor the garbled litanies of the administratum. An antiquity beyond reckoning, its phonemes warping the very illumination. The vault it unveiled scorned orthodox Terran design. No arched supports or vaulted domes, no icons of piety or wards of sanctity. A round expanse ringed by 27 portals. The ground devoured echoes and radiance alike, rendering footfalls adrift in unreality. Central to it, a modest seat and desk, hewn from ivory-hued substance evoking osseous tissue, yet impossibly vast and flawless. Quote Tower intoned one gilded sentinel. Quote 1. That final edict puzzled me. How to police inner reflections. Still, I assented. Quote 2 announced a second, timbre identical to his peer. Quote 3. They withdrew, gliding with supernatural grace through an archway. I settled at the slab, positioned my slate, and endured the quiet. The hush, I pressed close against the barrier, feeling the tangible pressure of its solidity. My senses sharpened to the thump of my pulse, the faint whisper of fabric from my garments, the subtle gulp echoing in my throat. According to my wrist device, exactly 43 minutes had passed in that wait, yet time dragged on endlessly while somehow rushing by. As the panel across from me slid aside, I braced for the sight of a warden guiding the captive inside. But no, a lone silhouette stepped through, unrestrained and seemingly without any escort. That detail jarred me right away. No inmate, particularly one supposedly confined since the era of heresy, ought to move so unhindered. Still, in he came, a fellow of average stature, lean like an academic, clad in plain gray attire suitable for a minor office functionary. His features delivered the real jolt. He looked barely past 30 standard Earth years, with bright gaze and flawless complexion. A span of 10. 0 years in captivity should have etched some trace, even with allowances for youth extension therapies. Far more unsettling, though, was the serene grin on his face, radiating unshakable conviction. Not the wild zeal of a zealot, but the calm poise of one whose forecasts had proven accurate time and again. Without a word of permission, he took the seat opposite, clasping his hands tidily before him on the surface. Those digits stretched elegantly, spotless, with nails filed to precision. No rough patches, no wounds, not a hint of the fading tones that mark advancing years. "Interrogator Malchus Rowe," he intoned, his tone laced with the faintest trace of an unfamiliar inflection. "I've anticipated this encounter." A shiver ran through me at how he uttered my name, one I'd never disclosed. Quote 6. I countered, powering up my recording pad. He inclined his head in acknowledgement, that irksome smirk holding steady. Quote 7. Adhering to guidelines, I launched into the standard preliminaries. Quote 8. Quote 9. He responded, Quote 9. Quote 11. His grin stretched just a touch broader. Quote 9. He inched nearer. Quote 3. I maintained a stoic facade, despite a profound unease his demeanor sparked within. Quote 14, quote 15, 17, observed, cocking his head. Quote 16, quote 17, quote 18, quote 19, every phrase landed with deliberate weight, his eyes fixed on my every twitch. Quote 20, pure heresy, naturally, the mutterings of lunacy or fervent apostasy. And yet, the steady timbre in his voice, devoid of fanatic fire, lent his declaration an ominous gravity. Quote 21. I ventured with measured caution. 17 chuckled softly, like a breeze rustling through fall foliage. Quote 22. I offered no reply. Queries like those teetered on the edge of sedition. Quote 23. 17 pressed on. Quote 24. Quote 25. I challenged, my voice laced with doubt, even as my heart raced faster. Quote 26. 17 said, his expression flickering with brief sorrow. Quote 27. He nodded toward my pad. Quote 28. I logged these assertions, flagging them as probable fabrications, but duty required pursuing the thread. Quote 29. 17. Shut his eyes for a moment. When they reopened, I could have vowed a shift in their hue, though the room's dim glow obscured certainty. Quote 30. He delivered the words plainly, as if reciting the most ordinary of recitals, echoing long-accepted chronicles instead of delving into the deepest blasphemies. The sovereign's insight on such topics shines through plainly, I responded rigidly. Does it? Prisoner 17 queried. If that's the case, why am I still confined here, Inquisitor? Why not just put down a blasphemer who's endured for 10,000 years? What reason justifies my ongoing survival? The inquiry left me off guard. Truly, what rationale could justify sustaining such a captive at such vast cost and vigilance? What worth might their statements hold after countless millennia? Maybe, I suggested cautiously, it's to act as a warning about the perils of betrayal. A warning for whom? 17 gestured broadly. Who other than the guardians and rare guests like you even recognizes our presence? No, Inquisitor Rowe. We are preserved because we hold memories that demand retention, but can't be broadly revealed. And what might that be? 17 leaned in closer, and I caught myself mimicking the motion instinctively. His tone fell to a hushed murmur. The Emperor wasn't the sole contender for the seat of dread, and his outlook wasn't humanity's lone potential path forward. A soft tone rang out, jarring me from the moment. 17 pulled back, his fervor evaporating so utterly that I doubted my own perception. "Our session wraps up for now," he remarked amiably. "Ponder my words. Reflect on why you, in particular, were selected for this duty. We'll continue tomorrow." He rose and headed toward the entry point he had used. It parted seamlessly without any visible trigger or command. Pausing at the threshold, he glanced back with that disconcerting grin. "One last idea to mull over, Inquisitor. If I've been locked away for 10,000 years just for knowing the Emperor prior to his ascension, what doom might befall one who learns of his detainees long after they ought to have faded from memory?" The portal shut after him with the weight of a vault entombing its secrets. I remained still, fully conscious that surveillance was likely upon me. The slate in my grasp held my records, but as I scanned them, the entries felt empty, devoid of the nuanced tones and eerie assurance in 17's delivery. I lingered, anticipating the return of my attendant wardens to lead me topside. After almost an hour without a trace of them, I stood and neared my original access point. It stayed locked, impervious to my efforts. I attempted to shout, but my words echoed dully in the chamber's odd resonance. Silence answered. In time, I sank back into the seat, unclear if this was an evaluation, a penalty for some flaw in my questioning approach, or mere routine. My gaze drifted to the remaining 26 portals, curiosity building about their hidden contents. How many detainees occupied this enigmatic facility? Did they all mirror 17, eternally sustained and serenely defiant? The room's glow faded slowly, mimicking twilight, despite our deep submersion beyond any sunlight's reach. Devoid of provisions or hydration, and with the seat tolerable but unfit for rest, I pressed on. Still, as fatigue weighed on my eyes, I grasped that this was intentional too. Solitude, confusion, fundamental wants ignored. Time-honored methods of breaking now turned on the breaker himself. That evening, visions came of the Emperor, not the exalted figure in the Imperium's myriad effigies and monuments. In the reverie, he perched at a plain timber desk, features ordinary, fingers marked by script rather than slaughter. He inscribed in a tome with endless leaves. Lifting his gaze to mine, his stare lacked celestial glow, bearing only deep exhaustion. "Yet another scribe," he uttered in the vision. "How many renditions of reality need documenting before one releases me at last?" I started awake to the space bathed in light once more, throat parched, body rigid. The slate rested on the surface ahead, joined now by a basic platter holding a basin of liquid and a lump of sustenance bar. No implements, I observed, nothing adaptable for harm or utility. As I partook of the tasteless fare, one portal swung wide. Not 17's exit, nor my ingress, but another. The warden who emerged matched my prior guides, his auric plating radiant beyond belief in the muted ambiance. Quote 33. He declared, then departed via a further egress, stranding me solitary anew. Shortly after, the announcement's doorway parted once more. The entrant differed starkly from 17. Unlike the prior one's flawless veneer, this figure showed clear scars. His stature hinted at former grandeur, maybe rivaling an Astartes in build, yet now bent and warped. One limb terminated in a severed end at the joint, ca cauterized and weathered by ages past. His features were a wreckage of scarred flesh, one orb supplanted by an implant so outdated its form escaped my recognition. He advanced with evident strain, every motion betraying agony even as he labored to conceal it. In contrast to 17's crisp, deliberate words, his tone grated out in a gravelly wheeze upon utterance. "The novice questioner," he declared, easing his frame cautiously into the seat across from mine. "Malchus Rowe, hailing from Gudrun at the outset." "Indeed. Prior to your enlistment, the corrosive tang of that planet lingers in your very genes." I reined in my astonishment at this uncanny insight. Goodrun had been my homeworld, true, but such details were locked away in my inquisitorial archives, undetectable by any mortal olfactory sense, augmented or otherwise. I am inmate 8, he pressed on, bypassing any reply from me. Though I once bore a title that struck terror through 5 sectors, once I commanded a physique capable of rending a vehicle asunder bare-handed, once I led kin who would perish for my sake. And did. He emitted a guttural noise akin to mirth. Now, I'm merely an entry in some obsolete registry, as you'll become. Recount your offenses, I instructed, resolved to uphold procedure. 8's prosthetic gaze whirred faintly as it locked onto me. Quote 41. Quote 42. He flicked his lone hand in casual dismissal. Quote 43. I jotted this down, yet another assertion of primordial duty. Quote 44. Quote 45. 8 amended. Quote 46. Certain instruments outperformed their peers. Quote 47. You're alluding to the Adeptus Astartes, I observed, drawing the link. You profess origins among the founding chapters. 8's lens bored into me with unnerving fervor. Founding? Hardly. The purest prototypes didn't endure the forging. We trod atop their dissolved forms in literal terms. The initial Gene Forge's tiles were laid with the melted husks of the rejects. He inclined closer. Inquire of the chapter, questioner. Probe which Primarch's imperfect lineage courses in my blood. Quote 51. Which chapter did you fight for? Quote 52. The vanished one. Quote 53. Neither the 9th nor the 2nd, those labels arose afterward to mask the voids. Ours was the erased host, birthed ere the Primarch initiative reached fruition. Quote 54. Test models with experimental indoctrination. The Emperor yet refined his craft, probing the bounds of mortal alteration and mental etching. Quote 55. The sanctioned chronicles say differently. Quote 56. The sanctioned chronicles. Did 17 recite that to you too? We detainees savor scant diversions, but dissecting the indoctrination fed to fresh examiners offers mild diversion. The evolving tapestry of the Imperium's verities over epics. I scowled. You converse with fellow inmates. Beyond methods your overseers can trace or thwart, 8 answered enigmatically. Certain ties defy corporeal divides. Certain cognizance endures past standard bounds. Abruptly, he pounded his surviving knuckles against the surface, jolting me. Do you grasp the torment of cerebral purgation, questioner? Of your essence flayed like sinew from marrow, yet sensing the ghost of your former self in the void left behind? I held silent, unsettled by his fervor. The Emperor embodied myriad qualities, but profligacy was never among them, 8 resumed, his demeanor steadying. Botched trials were recycled, volatile forerunners were altered and reinstated. My chapter fell short for stellar dominion. Our programming harbored defects I shan't detail, but select bearers of valuable attributes were extracted. Quote 3. For what end? Surveillance, confinement, pursuing our own when required? Quote 64. Who more fitting to sentinel against the void than those who'd brushed it and emerged? Who sharper at spotting decay's markers than the once afflicted? Quote 65. You have inquiries. Interrogator row. Quote 66. The captives offer uniform particulars that clash with accepted imperial records. Quote 67. Indeed. Quote 68. That's precisely why they remain incarcerated rather than simply slain. Do their assertions hold water? The custodian eyed me without a word for a few moments. Truth is a matter of viewpoint, interrogator. Across a sufficiently vast span, it turns into a hazard. That's no response. Quote 72. It's the sole one you need for your designated role. He nodded toward my data slate. Your orders were to document their statements, not to judge them. A surge of irritation rose within me. What's the point of this procedure? If their declarations are hazardous enough to justify perpetual confinement, why hazard introducing a fresh operative to them in every repetition? Quote 75. You presume every iteration serves just a single aim. Quote 76. How many interrogators preceded me since the Inquisition's inception? 412. His delivery was straightforward, devoid of inflection. Prior to that, the interrogation rites were handled by other imperial bodies. And how many resumed their posts thereafter? The custodian offered no retort, which spoke volumes. Prisoner 8 implied in vacant chamber lies in wait for me, I remarked, keeping my tone even. Is that my destined end? That hinges completely on your choices, Malchus. The custodian advanced to the portal he'd come through. This day, you'll question prisoner 12. He has expressly sought your presence. His account might offer insight. Quote 84. Interrogator Malchus Rowe. Quote 85. I've anticipated this exchange for an exceedingly long while. You're prisoner 12. Quote 87. I am at present. Quote 88. In the past, I served as interrogator Malchus Rowe. Quote 89. Elaborate. Quote 90. I occupied your very position some 2,000 years past by my reckoning, although chronology warps oddly here. I received identical directives, logged the declarations of the Emperor's most ancient inmates, assess their propositions against verified chronicles, ascertain which realities, if any, could be extracted from their deviations. You purport to be me, I replied tonelessly. A later iteration. No, he amended. I assert to be an earlier variant of you from a prior loop. One among numerous, I reckon, although we're barred from learning our precise tally or conversing openly with our duplicates. Quote 95. Preposterous. Even with cutting-edge juvenile treatments, 2,000 years exceeds ordinary human limits. Quote 96. 12. Quote 97. Yet we abandoned the ordinary the instant we were chosen for this charge. Quote 99. Inspect your right hand, interrogator. The faint mark near your thumb's root. You suppose you acquired it in the midst of training. A blade injury from hand-to-hand drills. Without meaning to, my gaze shifted to my own palm. The mark was right there, a faint pale streak precisely in the spot he'd pointed out. That's no ordinary scar, 12 went on. It's the initial access site for the enhancements. They start off understated. Boosted recall capacity, greater defense against mental coercion, prolonged tissue repair, essential improvements for an examiner dealing with interviewees who could try to sway you. My thoughts spun wildly. If his words held any truth, I had undergone bodily changes without awareness or permission. The consequences were immense, a core breach of inquisitorial guidelines. Still, it accounted for some oddities I'd observed lately. Exceptional bodily endurance, a photographic memory that outstripped my colleagues. What's the goal of this routine? I inquired, forcing myself to stick to details instead of the dread gnawing at my core. Why collect accounts that stay buried forever? Those accounts get disseminated, 12 answered, to a select few at the pinnacle of imperial administration. The High Lords require occasional nudges about key historical truths, especially if they're mulling shifts in policy that could brush against banned tech or practices. Then, why avoid plain documents? Why this convoluted setup with captive questionings? 12 offered a faint smile. Documents can vanish, get tampered with, or misconstrued. Oral history, when safeguarded and refreshed at intervals, proves far sturdier across eons. We're not just logging their stories, interrogator. We're transforming into the archives ourselves. Nausea hit me hard, the keeper remarked. 412 examiners preceded me, and not one went back to their old duties. 12 verified. A few got rated unfit and eliminated. The rest, including me, were seen as having the ideal mix of devotion, smarts, and mental fortitude to act as enduring vaults for perilous secrets. Locked away, I muttered resentfully. Safeguarded, he countered. The things we hold can't enter wide circulation, but they can't fade away completely either. The Imperium treads a fine edge between vital blindness and disastrous amnesia. I reflected on the earlier accounts, the recurring motifs threading through them all. The captives describe other routes for mankind, alternate strategies for psychic growth, tech advancement, alien dealings, options that were weighed and discarded, 12 noted with caution, or maybe tabled until humankind advances to a point where it could chase them without risk. Who gets to judge when humanity's prepared? I pressed. Who made the Emperor the judge of our capabilities? A sharp gleam sparked in 12's gaze. And there's the crux. The query that seals your destiny, interrogator. The uncertainty that divides the ones slated for removal from those recruited to our ranks. I saw my mistake, moments too late. The whole procedure was the assessment, not only of my skill in capturing statements, but of how I'd respond to them, my ability to take in outlawed views without letting them taint me, or maybe my readiness to embrace confinement for the sake of outlawed insights. I serve the Emperor, I declared steadily. I challenge the approach, not its need. So did I, 12 responded. So do we all, at this juncture. He bent closer. You've got one last session after this one. The inmate awaiting you has lingered here from the start. Their account will wrap up the tale you've been piecing together. Then, you'll face a decision that's scarcely a decision. What decision? Whether to claim your role here or erase all you've uncovered. His face turned somber. I beg you. For our mutual benefit, opt to retain it. Rejects aren't merely scoured and sent back to duty. The handling is deeper, more absolute. A shiver coursed through me. They're put to death. Execution seems kind next to the fate of those who reject their lot but have soaked up excessive hazardous lore. 12 touched his forehead. The psyche gets broken down. Central ego frameworks pulled out and reused. What's left is alive by technicality, but devoid of true humanity. Those lumbering servitors you encountered descending here, the ones with odd implants, botched examiners, their thoughts stripped of self, yet harboring valuable brain frameworks. Terror flooded me as I remembered the servitors and their pair of knowing eyes. I'd felt off about them, but brushed it aside as simple nerves. How can I trust your words? I uttered, my tone flat even to myself. This might be a cunning loyalty probe, a concocted tale meant to unmask hidden rebellious leanings. A fair doubt, 12 conceded, one I harbored back when my personal loop. I possess no evidence capable of dispelling your skepticism, merely this insight. Reflect on the vast investments poured into this installation, the hands-on participation of the custodians, the intricate safeguards in place. Would anyone go to such extremes just for a straightforward allegiance check, something far simpler to handle via standard interrogation techniques? He made a compelling case. The immense scope of this endeavor, sustained over thousands of years, pointed to objectives well beyond weeding out disloyal elements from the Inquisitor cadre. And if I opt to remain, I inquired, further alterations will be made to you. Your cellular breakdown will be halted nearly entirely. Your recall abilities broadened. You'll receive a numeric identifier and a defined function within the holding procedures. Once every several hundred years, a fresh Inquisitor will question you, chosen for their similarity to your baseline mental makeup. You'll share your insights, contributing your viewpoint to the growing archive. An endless confinement, I remarked with resentment. An endless mission, 12 replied. Not many mortals get to boast of that. Before I could reply, the customary chime rang out, marking the close of our session. 12 stood from his chair with the deliberate grace of someone accustomed to rationing vitality across ages. Quote 989, he advised, the last detainee will deliver unvarnished reality, free of spin or motives. Your handling of it will shape far more than your own destiny. He lingered at the threshold. If you elect to unite with us, we'll have forever to harmonize our common essence. If you decline, then I'll grieve the lost potential. The portal sealed shut after him, carrying the same inescapable weight I'd grown used to. I remained still, my thoughts swirling amid consequences and options. Assuming 12's account held true, my assignment here stemmed not from my expertise or devotion, but from a particular mental template rendering me ideal for perpetual duty as an animated chronicle. My whole tenure as an Inquisitor, maybe my whole existence, had been molded to lead to this inevitable outcome. Still, uncertainty lingered. It might all be an intricate trial, a contrived scenario to assess my reaction to blasphemous ideas. The captive's accounts, though eerily uniform, clashed with core tenets of the Imperium, portraying the Emperor as a scheming tactician instead of mankind's sacred guardian, veered into the deepest sacrilege imaginable. I scanned my records again, hunting for contradictions or reasoning errors that might expose the ruse. What emerged instead was a seamless counter-narrative accounting for some baffling facets of Imperial doctrine. The missing sequences in the Space Marine Legion's roster, the odd hush over the Emperor's initial endeavors, the Mechanicum's baffling slide into technological decay, even as they claimed to protect primordial wisdom. Rest evaded me through the night. I wandered the round room, examining all 27 entrances, pondering which supposedly lay vacant, reserved for me. Nothing set them apart, no signs hinting at the secrets past each barrier. The layout seemed deliberately maze-like, yet another sly tactic to erode defiance. As dawn's illumination gradually intensified to herald the new cycle, I'd arrived at no solid resolve. I'd listened to the concluding account before charting my path. Even so, 12's declaration lingered like a shadow, an option that's scarcely a decision. My data slate flickered to life unbidden, showing a brief directive. Terminal questioning sequence engaged. The words blinked briefly before vanishing, supplanted by a timer ticking down from 60 minutes. As I observed, the digits started to dwindle. No custodian appeared to herald the ultimate inmate. Rather, at 0, the panel straight across from me parted without a sound. The area inside was pitch black, disclosing nothing about its dweller. I braced myself, uncertain after the prior revelations. A sound arose from the void, genderless and ageless, echoing not through air but straight into my psyche. "Interrogator Malchus," it intoned. "Draw near. Regulations required the inmates to enter my space, not vice versa." Nevertheless, I rose to my feet, advancing to the opening as though drawn by unseen strings. A spark of warning ignited, only to fade under an influx of serene assurance. This break from routine struck me as proper, even essential. I crossed into the gloom, thick enough to feel tangible. The panel shut, severing the glow from the hub room. Briefly, utter isolation engulfed my senses, no trace of my breath or anything else. Slowly, a subtle radiance emerged, less illumination than a whisper of visibility outlining the environment. The area stretched immense, much grander than its confines ought to permit. It seemed unlikely that such vastness could fit within the facility's apparent confines. The vaulted ceiling vanished into shadow overhead, and the walls receded out of sight. Ahead lay what looked like a span crossing an endless chasm. In the midst of that span loomed a silhouette. My initial sense was one of flawless balance and harmony. A humanoid shape crafted in an ideal mold, defying gender yet embodying elements of both, or perhaps none at all. Its surface shone like buffed stone, its traits so exquisite they bordered on overwhelming. It bore no garb, yet exuded no vulnerability of exposure, its essence rising above such trivialities. "The last captive," I murmured, my words falling dull and hollow in the odd echoes. "The initial captive," the silhouette amended, its tone bypassing sound to echo straight in my thoughts. "I, seized prior to the creation of the enclosures. I, who compelled their making." I advanced with care, my instincts blaring alarms that my frame disregarded. Nearing it, I detected faint distortions in its flawlessness, its ratios altered subtly from varied perspectives. Its countenance, though stunning, held shapes incompatible with mortal features. "You're no human," I stated, the truth emerging without much surprise. "I was never human," it concurred, "though I donned human guise-like attire when it served my aims, as my species often did." "What exactly are you?" "In the terms you use now, I'd fall under warp being, an Imperium denizen shaped and directed by mortal faith and contact." The entity's impeccable lips formed what could pass for a grin. Quote, "Wh40K." I ought to have quaked with dread at this confession. A fiend or warp hunter lodged in the Imperial Palace's depths, right under the Emperor's seat. But alarm stayed remote, detached, like it afflicted another. Maybe due to the alterations 12 had referenced, or perhaps this being's influence on my senses. "Why confine you instead of eradicate you?" I inquired, the words flowing unbidden despite their subtle jab at Imperial doctrine. "Because annihilation proved unattainable and still does," the being responded plainly. "I predated your Emperor's ascent. I'll outlast your realm's fall to ruin. I may be restrained, enclosed, reduced, but never fully erased. With an elegant motion, it altered the environs. Abruptly, we were in an old workshop, clearly of human origin, but wielding devices beyond my recognition. Figures in plain attire bustled nearby, oblivious to us, absorbed in their tasks. At the heart of their efforts rose a presence whose likeness eluded my recall, ever morphing, yet radiating undeniable command. The Emperor, I exhaled, though this iteration scarcely matched the radiant sovereign depicted in imperial art. Prior to that name, the being affirmed, when he was merely the finest human psyker, seeking mankind's path to redemption. This marked his premier achievement, subjugating beings like me to aid rather than assault. The vision altered once more. Now we overlooked a war zone under a heavens rent by aberrant forces. Fighters in early space marine plating clashed with foes that pained my gaze to confront, monstrosities of fang, limb, and defying form. The grand campaign erased all traces of those primal pacts, the being went on. The Emperor knew mankind would reject harsh realities of its endurance, that vital deals, though essential, might erode the mental bedrock he aimed to forge. The vista shifted anew. A round hall akin to the one I'd departed, but fresh, its faces unscarred by ages. 27 forms encircled a raised platform, where the Emperor's shape now echoed more the familiar depictions, though still vital flesh, not the withered husk on the golden throne. We who held forbidden knowledge unfit for oblivion, yet too perilous for liberty, the being intoned, the Emperor's inaugural detainees, secured by arts merging real and unreal, hidden below his emerging citadel. You mean the Emperor partnered with warp beings? I pressed, skepticism sharpening my tone. That flies in the face of all the Imperium upholds. The Imperium upholds mankind's endurance, the being rebutted. The methods have ever bowed to that goal. The Emperor grasped what narrower intellects missed, that persistence demands uneasy partnerships and bitter tactics. The apparitions dissolved, restoring us to the shadowed span. The being gazed at me with eyes that held entire galaxies within their depths. Over the span of 10,000 years, I've observed this pattern unfold time and again. It spoke. Quote 23. Why share this with me? I questioned. If I'm just another in a sequence of countless others, what good comes from such disclosure? Because you stand apart, Malchus Rowe, the being replied, and for the first time, its flawless tone carried a hint of feeling, maybe eagerness or even optimism. You bear a genetic trait crafted by the Emperor himself, a code that surfaces in human lineages only once in several thousand years. Those who carried it before rose to become his most devoted followers, including Malcador. The mention hit me like a bolt. Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's closest confidant, interim ruler amid the Horus Heresy's chaos, a legend woven into the fabric of the Imperium's saga. Quote 126. I objected. Quote 27. It responded. Quote 128. And what role is that? At that moment, with the Emperor bound to the golden throne, the being's demeanor altered ever so slightly. His form may be imprisoned, but his mind roams free. What do you suppose keeps this place running by edicts from 10,000 years past? Who, in your view, picks each fresh examiner when the need arises? The realization left me reeling. You're implying the Emperor still oversees this endeavor, that he handpicked me via proxies? His focused efforts go to graver concerns, yet the guidelines for choosing were his creation, just as this archive's mission was. The being approached, its impeccable visage now near enough for me to discern the faint unnaturalness more sharply, the overly precise balance, the gaze that mirrored nothing back. You were selected for your ability to comprehend the ultimate reality, Malchus Rowe, the reality of the Emperor's vast plan, which holds that humanity's present condition is merely a bridge, a pupil phase extended on purpose until the race achieves readiness for its ultimate transformation. Urgency sharpened the being's words. Quote, what are there? With a gesture, it summoned fresh images encircling us, people exhibiting talents far exceeding imperial allowances, mind-based abilities wielded freely, devoid of dread, devices that merged fluidly with flesh, unlike the Mechanicus's rough prosthetics. Extraterrestrial beings collaborating with humans on shared aims. This is the Emperor's blueprint for humanity's end state, the being clarified. A race awakened to psychic potential, evolved through tech to shape its destiny, wise enough to engage the wider cosmos without prejudice or rage. The Imperium served solely as a safeguard, not humanity's pinnacle. Heresy, I murmured, the term ringing empty amid the vision's crush. Quote 187, the being amended. Quote 188. The images dissolved again. The being pointed to a portal that materialized at the bridge's far end, mirroring the entry I'd used. Quote 189. It stated. Quote 140. Quote 101. I challenged, fury surging at the unthinkable dilemma forced upon me. Quote, Frida. Quote, Sartiars, the being conceded. Quote 1. I faced the portal, thoughts spinning from upheavals that shattered my every conviction about the Imperium and its architect. Pausing before crossing, I glanced back at the flawless form. I stood upon the bridge, inquiring. Quote, 145. Not the designation of prisoner one, but your authentic identity from before this captivity. For an instant, I suspected silence would be its reply. Instead, those flawless lip-shaped syllables that transcended spoken words, etching themselves straight into my mind. A designation that evoked both timeless antiquity and fresh emergence, evoking dread and splendor in equal measure. After that profound label dissolved from my thoughts, leaving merely a resonant trace, it continued. Quote 146. A crude summary, yet it encapsulated my core role within your existence. I mirror to conscious entities the realities they urgently require, yet dread confronting most. The portal parted, flooding the area with illumination from the core room. I crossed the threshold without a backward glance, sensing the burden of my choice already bearing down. It closed with an air of inescapable verdict. The heart of the chamber looked unaltered. My data tablet sat precisely where I'd placed it on the desk. Nevertheless, my viewpoint had transformed beyond repair. The ring of entrances encircling the space now struck me as emblematic rather than structural, a barrier encircling forbidden insights that must remain confined eternally. The seat I'd occupied across 7 sessions resembled a tribunal bench, the spot where my destiny would be sealed forever. I picked up the tablet, scanning the entries from each interrogation. They now appeared as shards of a grander verity, components of an enigma strewn intentionally through various accounts to block any lone captive from revealing the full scope. Combined, however, with the climactic disclosure from the first prisoner, they wove a unified counter-history of the Imperium and its originator. A leader not godly, but utilitarian, wielding whatever instrument or partner advanced his grand design. An aspiration for humankind stretching well past the rigid, timid realm that had endured for 10 millennia. A verity safeguarded in the galaxy's most fortified vault on Terra, watched over by guardians who might never grasp the full nature or rationale of their charge. The primary entrance swung wide, allowing 3 custodians to enter. Their auric plate reflected the glow in a manner that now seemed practical rather than celestial, craft of superior engineering, not holy fabrication. Interrogator Malchus Rowe, one declared, the questioning phase is over. Submit your analysis now. I drew myself up, the gravity of resolution weighing on my frame. My forthcoming words would shape not only my near-term path, but possibly the course of ages ahead, perpetual confinement as a sentient archive or erasure of self and demotion to servitor form. Still, pondering my choices, I discerned a different route, unnoted by the inmates, likely overlooked in their own deliberations. The accounts I've documented present views clashing with sanctioned imperial chronicles, I ventured cautiously. They imply a divergent tale of the Emperor's tactics and long-term aims for our species. The custodian inclined his head briefly. Your judgment on these assertions. This was the pivotal juncture. Convention demanded denial of such blasphemies or endorsement of their veracity, each sealing my doom accordingly. I hold, I articulated deliberately, that reality blends aspects from both accounts. The Emperor probably resorted to approaches deemed profane today. He might well have envisioned humanity's future in ways surpassing our grasp. That said, detaining these insights via endless incarceration of their bearers betrays a core misreading of his design. The custodians stood rigid, faces veiled by stoic auric visors. Undeterred, I advanced along my selected course. Should the Emperor have intended these verities held until humankind could bear them, indefinite lockdown dooms them to irrelevance. A vault forever sealed equates to obliterated wisdom. "You suggest a substitute?" queried one custodian, the initial breach in their rigid demeanor from my unanticipated stance. "Targeted dissemination," I countered. "Not a wholesale reveal to the populace, which would shatter imperial order disastrously, but phased disclosure to pivotal figures able to nudge evolution toward the Emperor's primal blueprint, the High Lords, commanders of loyalist Space Marine chapters, the Inquisition's core ranks." "Unfeasible," another custodian countered. "The peril of distortion or abuse defies tolerance." "That peril endures regardless," I retorted. "Annually, the Imperium veers wider from the Emperor's authentic will, growing ever more rigid in creed, inert in tech, hostile to outsiders. The husk designed to shield humanity in its fragile phase has morphed into a cage barring. Voicing its development, wouldn't that betray the Emperor's grand design far more than the calculated chance of measured disclosure?" The Guardians shared looks, a wordless exchange beyond my grasp. At last, the lead one addressed me once more. "We shall weigh your idea. In the meantime, pending our verdict, you'll remain under watch. Neither endorsement nor outright dismissal, just a holding pattern." I'd braced for death or chains over such blasphemous ideas, not this administrative stall. Maybe, after all, even these eternal sentinels were starting to question the value of 10 millennia of rigid traditions. "Where am I to be confined?" I inquired. "In the space set aside for you," the Guardian answered, nodding toward one of the 27 entrances. "The alterations started in your choosing have advanced enough for basic restraint. More changes will follow once we settle your position." Thus, I'd end up with the captives anyway, if only for now. The notion ought to have chilled me, yet a peculiar serenity settled in. I'd voiced the reality as I saw it, championed what I thought the Emperor truly desired if his initial blueprint matched the tales. Success or failure of my pitch, I'd upheld my principles. Quote 165, I declared, straightening my stance. The Guardians guided me to a portal like all the rest encircling the hall. It slid open as they neared, exposing a chamber narrower than I'd pictured. Just a bare enclosure lined with the same shadow-swallowing substance as the main area's base. No furnishings, no comforts in sight, only void. Quote 166, one Guardian noted. Quote 107. I entered the enclosure, pivoting to regard them as the panel started to seal. Quote 108. Quote 169. Came the enigmatic response. Quote 170. The barrier locked, plunging me into absolute black. Briefly, dread surged to engulf me. Slowly, though, I sensed entities past the tangible barriers, thoughts brushing mine with the wariness of long-secluded souls encountering novelty. The fellow inmates extending feelers via whatever mind links their endless captivity had forged. I detected 17's sharp logic, 8's hardened endurance, 12's mental rhythms eerily akin to mine, and undergirding it all, the immense timeless awareness of inmate 1, watchful yet uninvolved. Greetings, kin, echoed 12's psychic tone, identifiable amid the odd conduit. Quote 172 from quote 173. I sent back, finding thought projection came effortlessly. Quote 175 interjected a fresh mental timbre, unfamiliar yet poignant. Quote 185, quote 186, grumbled 8's rough inner voice. After 10,000 years of identical routines, even the gilded machines might see merit in change. Their presences enveloped me, an ensemble of the overlooked and restrained. Beings burdened with forbidden knowledge, too precious for erasure, yet too dangerous for liberty. I picked up no animosity, no envy over my possible varied outcome, just exhausted optimism that my bold stance could disrupt an age-old cycle. Settle in, 12 suggested. Adapting to sense-free awareness can unsettle at first. We'll ease you through it. I allowed my mind to unfurl into the void, no more resisting the enclosure but probing its edges and scopes. Should my detention stretch decades or eons awaiting judgment, I'd spend it absorbing lessons from these companions, assembling a fuller grasp of the Emperor's primal intent and ways to align it with the Imperium's present state. And should my proposal gain traction, if bits of the concealed lore proved fit for cautious unveiling, I'd frame them to fortify, not fracture, mankind's tenuous cohesion. The Emperor's dream of mind-empowered, tech-savvy humans harmonizing with the cosmos couldn't arise from upheaval, but via steady, deliberate progress. As the Sentinel foretold, duration warped within my hold, exchanges with the others interspersed with solo lulls for contemplation. I knew no appetite or weariness in the old sense, merely rhythms of thought and stillness. I can't say how much time had elapsed in confinement when the entrance to the cell door slid open once more. It might have been weeks, months, or even years since the last time. My sense of time had long since broken down, sinking instead to the odd cycles of this altered life. The guardian who stepped inside differed from the ones who'd brought me here before. His armor bore a subtly altered design, hinting at the weight of years gone by. In his enormous golden grip, he held my data tablet, which now seemed ridiculously outdated. Quote 180. He announced, quote 101. I rose to my feet, vaguely registering how fluidly my body moved after what felt like endless stillness, another sign of the deep alterations they had inflicted on me. What's the outcome? I inquired, my voice feeling alien in my throat after so much silent mental exchange. The plan you proposed is now in effect on a trial scale, the Guardian answered. Certain Inquisition operatives have received restricted entry to the archives stored within these walls, along with orders to quietly shape Imperial strategies toward closer harmony with the Emperor's initial goals. A rush of optimism hit me, soon checked by wariness. And the outcomes, he conceded, are varied. A few have adopted the wider viewpoint and pushed for slow changes. Some dismissed the insights as corrupt heresy. A minor fraction were judged unfit and shifted to safer roles, yet the initiative persists. Indeed, it does. The Guardian offered the data tablet. You've been appointed as the designated archivist for this initiative. You'll curate relevant excerpts from the complete archives for each participant, customized to their mindset and rank in the Imperial structure. I took the device, observing how its controls had been overhauled since my previous use. Does this mean I'm being freed from isolation? You'll move to better accommodations inside the complex, he explained. Full liberty isn't feasible, considering your enhancements and the secrets you hold, but you'll shift from observer to participant. Not liberty, then, but direction. A chance to help guide the Imperium nearer to the Emperor's supposed core aims. It surpassed what any prior questioner had managed, based on whispers from the other captives. Quote 192. I pressed, quote 193, quote Coffee Modo 4, the Guardian said bluntly, quote 195. So, a limited success. My circumstances upgraded, my insights applied, yet my companions lingered in endless seclusion. I sensed them brushing the fringes of my mind, attuned via the psychic links forged in captivity. Quote 196. I declared at last, quote 197. The Guardian paused for a moment, likely consulting unseen directives. At length, he inclined his head. Quote 198. It was the most I could expect in this bind, a tentative move toward an altered path, no matter how modest. Over ages, this method might subtly redirect the Imperium's path, nudging humankind toward the promise the Emperor once dreamed, before dire needs birthed a system rooted in blindness and dread. As the Guardian led me from the cell to my updated space and responsibilities, I caught a fleeting mental brush from Prisoner 1. a layered blend of endorsement, caution, and perhaps a hint of wryness. The idea arrived not in language, but as raw essence. Truth slips through even the tiniest cracks. I am Malchus Rowe, former Inquisitor of the Sacred Inquisition, now keeper of the Emperor's concealed verities. This log acts as both account and guide. If it finds you, understand that the Imperium you uphold might stray from the Emperor's design, forged instead from what humanity needed to endure its bleakest trials. The armor that shielded our frailty was never destined to be our forever home. When the time ripens for humankind, the realities linger in the shadows under the imperial palace, the Emperor's earliest captives who recall what once existed and what could still emerge.